Tonight, a warm story from an old carpenter's workshop, late at night, about an old man, a cradle he made long ago, and the new little life, almost here, that he was making it ready for. Late at night, when the village was asleep, there was still a lamp burning in the old carpenter's workshop, and Anders at his bench, working on the cradle. He should have been in his bed, an old man like him, and he knew it. But the baby was coming any day now, his daughter's first, his first grandchild, and the cradle was not quite finished, and he wanted it ready. So the lamp burned late, and the old man worked on. The workshop was the warmest, best-smelling place he knew. It smelled of wood, of pine and oak, and the sweet, sharp smell of fresh shavings, and of the oil he rubbed into the grain, and of the small fire in the corner, and of 50 years of making things out of wood in this one room. The walls were hung with his tools, each in its place, the handles worn smooth by his hands. Curls of shaving lay pale and soft on the floor, and in a nest of them by the warm fire, the workshop cat slept, as it always did. And in the middle of it all, up on the bench in the lamplight, stood the cradle. It was a small thing, a cradle, a little wooden bed on 2 curved rockers, just big enough for a very new and very small person. And this one was old. It was not new work. He had made it himself. This same cradle, 30 years ago and more, when his own first child was on the way. And it had rocked that child, and then the next, and the one after. All his children in their turn, here in this village, in this family. And then, when the last of them had grown too big for it, he had carried it up into the loft, and there it had waited, all these years, in the dark and the dust, for what it was waiting for now. For now his daughter, the very first child it had ever rocked, was about to have a child of her own. And so he had brought the old cradle down out of the loft and dusted it off, and looked it over with his careful old eyes, and he had set about making it ready, once more, for a new little life almost come. It had not come down from the loft unmarked. 30 years of children is a hard, happy life for a small wooden bed, and the cradle bore the signs of all of it. There was the place on the side rail, worn pale and smooth, where some baby, his eldest, he thought, had gnawed at the wood with their first hard-won teeth, long ago. There was the faint scratch of a drawing, a child's, that one of them had scratched into the foot of it with a nail when they were bigger and should have known better, and that he had been too soft-hearted ever to rub away. There was the little dent where it had once been knocked against a doorframe in somebody's hurry. The whole small bed was written over, soft and faint, with the marks of his children's beginnings, the way a much-loved thing always is. And he ran his old hand over all of it slowly, in the lamplight, reading it like a page he knew by heart. But one thing on it was not sound, One of the two curved rockers, the very feet the cradle rocked upon, had cracked. Somewhere in the long years up in the loft, a split running half through the good wood. And a cradle with a cracked rocker would not do. Not for a new baby. Not at all. It would have to be made new. And that was the thing he was about tonight. The last thing the old cradle needed to be whole and safe and ready again. A new rocker, made by hand, to carry it on. So he had chosen a good piece of oak, close-grained and strong, and without a flaw in it, the right wood to carry a child. And he had it on the bench now in the lamplight, with his tools laid out, and the night before him. And he set to work to shape it. To make a rocker is to make a curve, and a curve is the hardest thing in wood. It must be exactly right, exactly the same curve as its partner on the other side, or the cradle will rock crooked, or not at all. And there is no quick way to a true curve. There is only the slow way, by hand, taking off a little, and a little and a little more, and looking and feeling and taking off a little more. So that was how the old man made it. He marked the curve onto the oak from the old sound rocker, laid alongside it, and he cut it close with the saw. And then he took up his plane and began the long, slow work of shaping it true. The plane went hissing along the wood, and the shavings came curling up out of it, pale and sweet-smelling and thin as paper, and fell to the floor and onto the cat, who did not stir. He worked by hand and by eye, the way he had for 50 years, sighting along the curve, running his thumb down it to feel for any high place, planing it down, sighting again. He was old and slow, and his back ached if he stood too long. But his hands had not forgotten anything, and they went about the work sure and unhurried, and the curve came up true under them, stroke by stroke. And as he worked, his mind went back, the way it does at a long, quiet task in the night, to the first time he had ever made this cradle. 30 years before, at this same bench. A young man then with his first child on the way, and his heart in his mouth, planing the curve of these very rockers by this same lamplight, anxious to get them right, wanting the little bed to be good and safe and worthy of the small new person coming. He had been so young then. His hands had been quick and unscarred. And here he was again, an old man now, at the same bench, by the same lamp, shaping a rocker for the same cradle, for that first child's own first child, with the same care and the same wish, and the very same hands, only older. It seemed to him a fine thing, and a right one, that the same two hands should make this one little bed ready twice over, for two beginnings, 30 years apart. It took him a long while, and he did not mind. There was nowhere he would rather have been than here, late and warm in his lamp-lit shop, with the good wood under his hands and the sweet shavings at his feet, making a sound true rocker for the cradle, for the baby that was coming. Now and then he held the new rocker up against the old one to check the curve, and it came closer and closer to its match. And at last, very late, he held them side by side and could not tell, by eye or by thumb, which was the old and which was the new. They were the same curve. The rocker was made. Then he fitted it to the cradle and made it one with the little bed. He took off the cracked old rocker and set the new one in its place, snug and true, and pegged it home. And when it was done, the cradle stood square and sound again on its two good curved feet, ready to rock. But he was not finished yet, because the most important part was still to do. The part that was not about the wood being strong, but about the wood being kind. A new baby is the softest thing there is, and a cradle must be made fit to hold one. Not a splinter anywhere, not a sharp edge, not a rough place. Nothing in all of it that could catch or scratch the new soft skin that would lie against it. So the old man took up the finest of his sanding cloths and went over the whole cradle, every part of it, slow and patient and thorough, by hand. He smoothed every rail and every corner. He ran his old hand, a carpenter's hand, hard and scarred and not soft at all, over every inch of the wood, again and again, feeling for the smallest roughness, the way only such a hand can, and wherever he found the least thing, even the very least, he rubbed it away until the whole cradle, every surface a small hand might grip or a small cheek might lie against, was as smooth and soft to the touch as wood can be made. And then he rubbed the warm oil into it, slow, with a soft cloth, until the old wood glowed deep and warm in the lamplight, sealed and kind. He thought, as he did it, of the very small hands that would soon take hold of these rails. And he made very sure there was nothing in any of it, anywhere, but smoothness for them. And then, at last, it was finished. He lifted the cradle down off the bench and set it on the floor in the middle of the workshop, on its two good rockers, and he stood and looked at it a moment. The old cradle, made whole and smooth and ready again. And then he reached down and gave it the gentlest push, the way you would to rock a child, and let it go. And it rocked. It rocked slow and even and quiet, side to side, the way it always had. The new rocker and the old swinging together in one smooth motion, as if they had been made the same day by the same hand, which, near enough, they had. It rocked the way it had rocked his daughter 30 years before, in this same room, when she was the new little life almost come. And watching it now, the small empty bed rocking gently in the lamplight. It seemed to the old man that the years folded softly together. The child it had rocked then, soon to be rocked to sleep herself by the rocking of her own child in it now. He stood and let it rock until it slowed, all of its own accord, and came at last to rest. It was done. The cradle was ready. There was not a thing left wrong with it, nor a thing left to do to it, only to carry it in the morning down the lane to his daughter's house and set it ready by her bed for the baby that would surely come now any day, any night, any hour. He did not carry it over that night. It was very late, and the village was asleep, and his daughter with it, getting what rest she could while she still could. The morning would do for the carrying. So he left the cradle where it stood, in the middle of the workshop, finished, on the swept floor, in the last of the lamplight, ready and waiting, the way it had waited up in the loft all those years. Only not in the dark and the dust now, but down here in the warm, polished and whole and kind, with its work almost come round to it again. He banked the fire for the night, and gathered up the sweet pale shavings, and hung his tools back in their places. And before he put the lamp out, he stood by the cradle one more time, and rested his hard old hand on the smooth rail of it, the rail his own children had held, that his grandchild would hold, and gave it one more gentle push, and watched it rock, slow and quiet, in the warm, dark shop. A cradle made by hand, by an old man who loved them, for a new little life he had not met yet, and already loved, mended and smoothed and oiled and ready, rocking, empty, in the lamplight, on the last night before. Then he put out the lamp and went to his bed, and left the cradle rocking gently down to stillness in the dark, ready for the morning and the carrying and the small new life, almost here, that it would soon rock to sleep, the way it had rocked them all. The little cradle standing finished in the middle of the quiet workshop, mended and smooth and ready, glowing soft in the last of the lamplight, the sweet shavings swept up, the tools hung in their places, the cat asleep by the warm coals, and the old man gone to his rest, and the new little life almost come, and the cradle rocking, slow and slower and still, waiting in the warm dark for the morning, and the small one it was made to hold.